Special thanks to Digital Nova Scotia. They're a sponsor of this event. If you're ever interested in the 10-minute audit, you go to macmillansearch.com/SEO Brunch. You'll find a link there that is our intake form if you're a Digital Nova Scotia member. We do these audits exclusively for those members. We'd love to have an opportunity for a Digital Nova Scotia member. If you're not a member yet and you operate out of Nova Scotia, we highly recommend signing up for a membership at Digital Nova Scotia. I know it's been very helpful and powerful for us. And I know lots of other companies in the area have had great success with using Digital Nova Scotia. So DeepSense is our audit. Back in late May, we did do a 10-minute audit for DeepSense. And when we looked at that website, we focused specifically on improving branded search results and putting more in-depth tools in place to measure success and provide more details. Specifically, we suggested, we like to give a handful of action items. We don't want to hit you guys with a fire hose of information, but at least for the 10-minute audits. What we suggested here was setting up Google Search Console. So if anybody's not familiar with Google Search Console, it's a way of seeing what queries or keywords you're ranking for and how they're converting in Google specifically. So it can really work well with analytics data. There's all kinds of ways to leverage that information, but it really gives you an insight on how your website's performing in organic search. And that's great for measuring success and getting a little bit more in-depth detail, improving the homepage metadata. So we specifically look at branded search here, the homepage metadata before. I think I have an old picture of, this is what it looked like before for a branded search for DeepSense. So we wanted to update that. And then as well, we recommended setting them up with Google My Business because they're located at Dalhousie University. Dalhousie University's Google My Business was surfacing for their branded searches. So it really helped take a big chunk of that branded search and a lot of that visibility. So you'll see this was the results back in May. And then after May, I'll run a search actually. Let's search DeepSense. You'll see now a lot richer title, description. There's even more site links now. This Google My Business section on the right-hand side is no longer Dalhousie, specific to the DeepSense. And they really own this big chunk of property here. What we think is next is one last thing I'd like to add. Some great insights, although we can't take all the credit for this. You'll see around May, we did some changes and they've been really outperforming the previous year. You'll see the gap year over year gets a lot wider since implementing these branded changes. A lot of their traffic's driven right now by branded. Just quickly, Maggie, you're here from DeepSense. Was there anything that, any snags you hit or any issues you had implementing this?
I didn't think that I had too many issues. I really thought that you guys gave me some really clear guides to follow. I did not end up setting up the Google My Business, but I really wanted to get to do that because I really think that that would help us out a lot. But yeah, I honestly did not run into any problems. All of the feedback that you gave us was super clear and helpful.
Thank you so much. Did somebody else have to Google My Business? Because I did notice since then, we now see you guys showing up as your own property on the right-hand side.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's amazing then. I must have actually done it and I must have just forgotten along the way of doing it. But yes, okay, then that's great. But I might have to look at that again and see if there's anything that I can fix and improve with it.
All right. Well, great segue, because we did see what we would suggest for kind of the next steps is lean into this Google My Business. You got the property there. If the more you can keep it up to date, more relevant, there's lots of opportunities. Right now, it looks like it's just a Google Maps, like Street View output on there. Put your logo up there, come up with a cover, look at the various photo options. Anything you can do to keep your Google My Business updated is a signal that this is fresh, it's active. So if you don't have access to it, figure out who in the company does have access to it, and we would suggest leaning into that. When you got that up, I would say like once a quarter, maybe go through and refresh some images, or when you've had something drastic change to the company, there's opportunities to like upload pictures of you guys working, the internal staff. If you go through a logo change or any sort of branding changes, those are great opportunities to update this information and keep it up to date. It's also a good spot down here. If you take advantage of posts, you can, it's sort of like having social media right in the search results. If there's some sort of press release that goes out, if you end up hiring for people, you can use that space to advertise right in the search results, and it'll show up just down here in this area. And the other opportunity we see here is adding a tracking parameter. So the one we like to use, just wait for 1 second. What I suggest a tracking parameter so we can attribute this traffic separately. If you add this URL, you'll see this UTM source equals Google GMB, UTM medium equals organic, UTM campaign equals GMB. Just helps you segment this traffic in analytics and in Search Console. So what that would do is if you're coming in, if somebody clicks on this versus this, you'll be able to tell what kind of queries are driving this kind of traffic versus what kind of queries are driving this kind of traffic. It's a good way to separate that out, know what's coming in through Google My Business versus the regular results. And any questions about that, Maggie?
No questions at all. Yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. The other big opportunity we see with you folks, because there is a lot of branded traffic being driven to DeepSense from what we can tell from the third-party tools.
Pardon me, Mike.
Oh, yes, Kenji.
I'm not sure if we can see, are you in any other menus other than the home page right now? Or the...
Is it not? Oh, hang on. Thank you, Kenzie.
Oh, yeah, some folks brought that to my attention. I was, missing that.
My apologies, folks. It pauses if I let it sit for too long. So what we were saying from a tracking parameter standpoint, and if nobody saw that, I'll just quickly post this tracking parameter up again. So it's the home page, but you have this kind of information at the end, which just defines, helps you segment this traffic in the analytics and in Search Console. And so you can separate what kind of traffic's coming in from this website link versus what kind of traffic's coming in from the main branded regular result there. And then, so the next step we'd see, or the next opportunity we see, we noticed in industries, you have the project area, these individual areas that you guys work in. We would recommend breaking them out into their own individual pages. So right now you have a good opportunity to rank for industry, ocean industry related content specific for branded, but not the individual subjects. So in here, we've got like neural networks, speech and text. You do have information about this. If we could break that out into their own pages, and particularly, I see a great opportunity on projects, for an example. So there's 6 projects in here. The one that we dug into a little bit more was tracking illegal fishing with AIS data. So this information leads to sections of the page. But if we break these out into their individual pages, keep this main page where it's at, but have not all the details on here, some sort of leadway into it that links off into these pages, you have an opportunity to rank for the individual subject. So for an example, the one we saw with the legal fishing AIS data could be its own standalone page. We would recommend, you can have some sort of intro paragraph like this, and then you can get to a little bit more detail with this kind of content in there, and then break out this content a little bit further by answering the kind of questions people are searching around this main subject matter. Even though they may not have some search volume, by answering these questions, marking them up with a heading, putting them in this other content, you're adding an element of relevancy to the main subject matter. So to find out what kind of questions people are asking, all you have to do is find out what kind of keyword is being searched. So in this case, illegal fishing AIS data, and just try a few variations of this kind of the keyword. So like AIS data, illegal fishing, this is the one where we saw it was triggering people also asked. So when you come down here, you can see what is illegal fishing called? Why do ships turn off AIS? Answering that kind of a question would be a way to break out some additional content for this secondary page, specifically around illegal phishing AIS data. Yeah, any questions about that, Maggie?
No questions there, but that's all actually really interesting. And I didn't even really think about that. So I'm actually definitely going to do that. Yeah, these are all so helpful. So thank you so much.
No problem. And if you want to like drill into this a little bit further, what I have found too, like this question stuck out to me, like why do ships turn off the AIS? If you click on that, and then you'll notice you're starting to get a few more questions. Usually they tend to relate to the one you're showing some interest in. And then it starts expanding that list of questions. So if it doesn't all answer, like they're not all going to be relevant to what your product or service offering is specific about, you can kind of keep clicking and clicking and then figuring out which ones have any sort of volume. Kenzie, you'll have to remind me the name of the tool that we've been recommending. I think it's called Surf SEO or Keyword Surfer. Hang on, get the name of it right here. It's a great tool for getting volume that's free. Kenzie's going to dig it up. We use other tools to find this, but if you want to determine these questions to figure out what kind of search volume they have around them, because if they have a significant volume, it could be its own standalone article. If it doesn't have any volume, it's still a signal to Google that there's some relevancy there, and answering that question can help you rank for it. Thank you. Keyword Surfer, that's the name of it. Thank you, Kenzie. So that's all we had from an organic side. So I'm going to pass it over to Matt to give you a little bit of input on paid. I'll stop sharing. Matt, go ahead and share your screen.
Thanks, Mike. Before we go into my couple points here, I saw a question came in that was interesting, and it's from Oriel, so I'll pass it on to you. So Oriel asked, how relevant is it to use Google My Business for companies where the physical address isn't relevant? And he used the example of a media company, and so that can apply to a lot of folks. But what's your answer to that question?
Oh, for me, if it doesn't have a physical address, or the physical address is not important, it's a way for one to branded results. If you're not a big enough brand to get kind of a branded knowledge panel on the right-hand side, if you're McDonald's and you're searching like corporate McDonald's, it's probably not a good example because you're going to get all the individual locations. But if you've got a brand, you have an opportunity to get a knowledge panel on the right-hand side. But if you're not that big yet, having your Google My Business in there will secure that knowledge panel, at least locally. And you don't have to publish your address. You can register yourself as a service area business. Excuse me, I just had a carbonated iced tea. So it gives you a little bit more control of your branded results. You get a little bit more of that footprint, a lot more visual results. Do you have any input on that, Matt?
No, I think that makes total sense. But the reason why I passed it on is because Oriel's question would apply to people like myself. You know, I like anybody who's operating any kind of business but don't have a physical brick and mortar location for people to go to. So there's a lot of folks out there, especially now during COVID times when people are doing things in a slightly different way than maybe we used to. So that was interesting. Thank you. All right, so I'll share my screen real quick. I don't really have much in the way of.
One thing I would also add, Matt, is if the physical location is the most important thing, it's good to check it off. Just get it claimed and then move on. There's other things to fight and other battles to go at, and I would get that one just checked off and move on.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay, so I had three points for DeepSense that I want to cover, and two of them are things that come up often if you're a kind of a SEO Brunch regular. Some of these points will be familiar, but I find that this kind of stuff, like a lot of the things that Mike covers in the SEO portion, this stuff comes up again and again, kind of regardless of what type of business that you're running. And DeepSense is a little different from what we've talked about in the past. But the first point is bidding on brand search terms in Google search. So I just on my screen share, I have an example of what a local search for DeepSense looks like. And of course, we rank near the top locally. But that obviously is not always going to be the case. Using SEMrush, I saw that we have the position 3 kind of nationally, and the 2 or 3 other like kind of DeepSense named businesses that we compete with, at least on search, even if we don't compete for customers. So bidding on brand search terms makes a lot of sense, because you get to ensure that you own that top spot. It's very cost effective. Bidding on your own brand name, your bids do not have to be very high, especially if your competitors aren't bidding on their name either. So the competition is incredibly low. So it's a very little portion of your marketing budget, and it lets you add in things like extensions. So additional site links. You can add a direct link to your phone number. It helps kind of differentiate between you and your competitors. So it just makes a lot of sense to do that. So that would be kind of the first point. And luckily, also, it's very easy to set up. You basically just, if you don't already have a Google Ads account, you create one. And there's lots of great help out there for how to create a basic branded search campaign. And the other thing too that I forgot to mention in my notes, but is something that I think Mike would also agree with, which is when you create a branded search campaign, you have much more control over what that SERP looks like. So you get to add in, additional headlines, additional descriptions. You can test out different ideas for what you might want to do there. So there's lots of reasons to do that. And like I said, the cost can be minimal, and it's as much as you want. And of course, you can target that campaign to wherever it makes the most sense to you. It doesn't have to be worldwide or even nationally. It's just wherever you want kind of your result to show up on top. That's where you'd want to have that campaign geo-targeted. The second main point, and this is something I think I brought up on most, if not all, of our 10-minute audits, is installing the LinkedIn Insights tag. So if you're not familiar with the LinkedIn Insights tag, can help you do a bunch of things on LinkedIn ads, like run remarketing campaigns, and it helps you do conversion tracking on LinkedIn campaigns and then things of that nature. But even if you don't use LinkedIn ads, if you don't spend any money on LinkedIn, having the Insights tag can give you some additional information of the demographics of the people who visit your website. So you can get things that you can't get from Google Analytics, like job titles, the industry that the person who visited works in, company size. There's a bunch of different demographics selectors that you can use, and you can create this based on not just the whole website. Of course you can, but you can look at just specific pages. So if there's a specific page that you say, I want to know who visits this page, like what job titles, what industries, what company size, whatever, even down to the business name, I want to know who visits this page. So that can be really helpful in getting information about, whether it's a specific project page or whether it's, the careers page or anything. So I encourage you to set that up and to make several audience pages so that you can drill down into those demographic insights and get more information for, whatever purposes, whether it's advertising or not. And the third is kind of one that I just took a flyer on, and this is maybe less applicable to this year of all years, but something that comes up a lot with organizations and businesses like DeepSense in the past is, generally you're going to, again, in normal times, you're going to be attending events, conferences, symposiums, things of that nature in kind of the academic world or the kind of quasi-academic world. And a lot of times, whether you're just attending, whether you're speaking or presenting, or whether, whatever the case may be, you want people to know you're there and to kind of, get introduced to you somehow or pay attention to you in some way. And one way to do that is something that I like to call air cover. So when you're attending an event, or like I said, an event, a conference, a symposium, whether it's digital or in person, there's lots of different ways that you can put some branded messaging into the mix in terms of, you know, it can say whatever you want. It can just be general kind of brand messaging, or it can be like, we're here, or here's our talk, it's on this day, or whatever. You know, the messaging can vary. And there's lots of different ways to attack this problem. But the one I wanted to just talk about briefly, and that I've done in the past, is you can use Twitter ads to target like lookalike audiences of the conference if they have their own Twitter account, or you know, maybe it's the kind of main person involved in the conference or whatever. There's lots of different ways you can target lookalikes of those accounts, and then you can further, if it's a conference in person, you can physically geo-target where the conference is. So if the conference is in Pittsburgh, you can run a campaign in Pittsburgh between such a date and such a date, you know, with a lookalike audience of the conference, of the Twitter account. And then what that lets you do is, you know, obviously the targeting is not going to be perfect, but it lets people who are attending the conference, gives them a better chance to kind of interact with or see your brand, whether you have, whether you're speaking at the conference or just attending or whatever. So this is just another way to kind of get people talking about or thinking about you guys while you're at an event. Any questions on any of those items?
No questions actually, but all of those were super interesting. And I have never heard of the LinkedIn ads, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is super cool. So I definitely think that I need to implement that for the website for sure. Even for doing it for like singular pages, that's really cool. So
yeah,
we've been kind of trying to see who's exactly checking out our pages. So this will be super useful. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I thought, you know, in your case specifically, it would be useful for those individual project pages. So, you know, not just for the organization as a whole, but, you know, obviously each project is going to have its own stakeholders. Obviously, there's people involved in each project, and you can kind of pass that along as like a value add to those folks and say, like, here's kind of the companies that are visiting your project page. And that can, you never know, that can kind of provide them with additional intel that might help them do all kinds of things, whether they're doing their own additional fundraising, or whether, you know, they want to get meetings with particular companies that might be interested, or whatever. That data can be invaluable kind of in the long run.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. So I'm definitely going to do that. Thank you
Great.
so much for your help with that.